On a lovely evening, found the courage to express his feelings for the notorious troublemaker of the class. The moment turned uncomfortable, leading to accept his defeat. Sensing his discomfort, decided to share something personal with him. Was regarded as a close friend. Stepped outside after losing 1,000 aura points and encountered his friend, who quickly deduced that had been rejected, noticing the tears flowing down his cheeks. Recounted the events that had transpired. Found it hard to accept the weak excuse that In had offered. At that moment, a ball sped directly toward. He made the choice to cultivate aura points. Found himself in a situation where he felt a mix of emotions, despite the circumstances surrounding him. The exhausting routine was so intense that it could make the destroyer appear like a fashion model. He still appeared as if he had spent most of his time inside a KFC restaurant. Later that day, arrived home. Gazing at a photograph of his parents, he felt a wave of nostalgia wash over him. The jeans he wore had nothing to do with his larger size. Had not laid eyes on his father since the day he had gone out to buy milk. He had listened to tales about a man renowned for his wrestling prowess. Feeling frustrated with his strict diet, longed to indulge in junk food, but he ultimately succumbed to the rapper's challenge. Afterward, he decided to go for a run. He reflected on his earlier aura debt and attempted to escape the consequences of his loss. After a short while, found himself completely worn out. He sought to discover the location to which he had fled. An eerie silhouette offered a compliment, catching everyone off guard. He leaped in front of him, felt a surge of panic as he worried that this might be an odd priest who had taken all the cake he had. The elderly man revealed his name to be. In their region, the creatures known as the were considered the most frightening of all monsters. Found himself completely disoriented, but before he could gather his thoughts, the elderly man quickly pulled out a bag, and he was captured as if it were a game of Pogo. After some time had passed, found himself freed from his restraints. She attempted to comprehend the unfolding events. Suddenly understood that he had stepped outside the human realm. Clarified that they had entered the realm of spirits. Every 666 years, it would occur. An ancestral ceremony took place too. The task was to choose the next king, in a place where exceptional young monsters from every clan face off against one another. The moment had arrived for the upcoming ancestral ceremony. Advised to settle down, feeling perplexed about why he was involved in the situation with his aging father's diapers. At that moment, disclosed that had goblin blood coursing through his veins. Felt a wave of shock wash over her, but soon after, a massive creature with a gaping maw emerged from the ocean. The figure descended from the sky and touched down directly in front of him. The elderly man informed that he could feast on the monster if he managed to conquer it. The monster was filled with excitement at the thought of devouring some top-quality human flesh. He sprinted ahead. The monster swung its enormous fist, landing a powerful blow on. The force propelled him through the air. Clarified that needed to demonstrate his worthiness too. He believed he needed to prove himself deserving of the title of king. The monster seized, its grip unyielding and fierce. With a powerful shove, he knocked the man down to the ground, attempting to crush him as one would a pesky insect. The elderly man, realizing the futility of the situation, had surrendered. Suddenly found that his goblin ability had come to life. He raised the creature's hand high. Couldn't believe his eyes at the sight before him. Experienced an unexpected transformation, bulking up significantly. Instinctively tapped into his goblin powers, managing to flip the monster with surprising agility. Stood firm, determined to cultivate his aura points after having achieved his first victory. The following day, shared with the events of the night before, describing it as a dream. Felt a sense of relief seeing enjoy himself, especially after the many setbacks had faced. Yet, beneath the surface, was quietly grappling with the lingering effects of trauma from the entire ordeal. Felt a sense of sadness, as he realized that had been defeated even within the confines of his own dream. Remarked on the oddity of the situation, noting how strange it was that. Was taken by surprise, as he found himself executing wrestling moves that he had never been taught. Decided to add that to his ever-expanding list of mysteries. His friend couldn't believe how deeply he had become lost in his dream. Contemplated that the tension he felt might stem from the numerous he had been gathering lately. At that moment, found himself contemplating whether his fixation on shedding pounds had escalated to the point where he envisioned himself muscular in his dreams. Out of nowhere, realized that he had returned to the spirit realm. Revealed to him that he had been dozing off while standing. Was astonished that had chosen not to cast her on him. As he surveyed his surroundings, he spotted the identical creature he had encountered during their previous encounter. Panic washed over him once more as he struggled to understand the circumstances surrounding him. Grandpa chose to pose a casual question. The villain standing beside him contemplated her thoughts about. Found it hard to accept the reality that he was just a miserable failure. She couldn't believe that someone she considered a nobody actually had goblin blood running through his veins. Shared the details of the fight she had seen with her. Felt unimpressed because relied solely on his physical strength instead of using any magic. Found himself battling a creature that his grandmother would have easily defeated even in her dreams. At that moment, broke into the conversation. He pondered whether he could return to the human realm. The old man sprang into action without hesitation, showing that he had come to a conclusion while was in a deep slumber. The nearby monsters, having observed the battle, were unable to react. The group suspected that was a descendant of goblins, a lineage they hadn't encountered in a long time. Known as the boogeyman, the statement was made that did not belong to the human race. The creature had transformed into a complete monster and instructed the monsters to share the news far and wide. His mind was solely occupied with thoughts of how to return home. Let out a breath of disappointment, coming to the realization that had not noticed he had transformed into a monster. She clarified that if he did not master the art of hiding his powers, a safe return to the human realm would be impossible for him. Asserted that he had never caused harm to anyone. Suddenly radiated a chilling aura of hostility. Found himself taking an instinctive step backward. The signs of his monstrous instincts were unmistakable. Shared that goblins held a place of honor among the various monsters. Was an inexperienced goblin, yet his strength had already exceeded that of ordinary humans. He realized that without proper control, he could unintentionally cause them harm. Had no intention of waiting 5 centuries to gain entry into the human realm. At that moment, disclosed that the decision hadn't been his to make. The current king had imposed limitations on his. Long ago, a monster made its way into the human realm. In a time long ago, monsters wandered the earth without restraint, leaving humans with no choice but to flee for their lives or they could either revere them or hold them in high regard. Following the conclusion of the most recent ancestral ceremony, new regulations were established to ensure the safety of humans. The presence of concealed monsters lingered in the shadows. As the king's rule approached its conclusion in 6 months, it became evident that those laws were destined to be revised. Conveyed the seriousness of the situation, noting that if such an event were to occur, it could result in a surge of monsters invading the human realm, leading to utter chaos. At that moment, presented with a decision. He could either bide his time for 6 months, similar to a fool, or he could hone his abilities and potentially avert the impending catastrophe. In that instant, wondered just how powerful he could grow. Noticing the determination in his expression, disclosed that, with the essence of goblin blood coursing through his veins, had the potential to become incredibly powerful. He sought to shield those dear to him. His victory in the ancestral ceremony would also bring significant implications. He had the ability to perform a dramatic retelling of the law that limited monsters from entering the world of humans. Interrupted, feeling exhausted by their ongoing chatter. Took the time to make a proper introduction. She disclosed that she would participate in the ancestral ceremony as the representative of her clan. Felt unimpressed by and questioned whether he truly had the courage to join in, despite his bravado. Remarked that was essentially unpredictable, constantly urging him to participate in the ancestral ceremony, even though he was still quite young. Continued to panic, as the reality sank in that monsters could invade the human realm in just 6 months. At that moment, expressed her frustration about needing to demonstrate her abilities through a test before she could step into the human realm. Consented, but she disclosed that the purpose was to evaluate her patience and self-discipline. Sayal felt a sense of acceptance wash over her, though she secretly wished it wasn't just a pretext for someone to disappear from her life. The confessed that he had another assignment in mind for her. The goal was to ensure that by the end of the month, would learn the fundamental skills of being a monster. This advancement would mean that both of them could gain entry into the human realm. Upon hearing that, felt lightheaded, realizing that the assignment was, for all intents and purposes, unachievable. Informed her that she had two choices, confront the situation or accept it. She considered the option of waiting 6 months, just like everyone else. Without warning, found himself engulfed by his enchanted sack. As the figure took to the skies, leaving the scene behind, turned to, inquiring whether he was aware of the monster force. Had no idea what was happening. She felt no shock. Instead, the monster that had vanquished suddenly emerged behind her. With out of the picture, a grin spread across their face. Anger radiated, causing the giant-mouthed monster to quiver in response. The creature, undeterred, lunged toward her with fierce determination. Felt a surge of panic wash over him. Belonged to the prestigious nine-tailed fox clan, marking her as a high-class monster. In the region, they were considered a kind of royalty among monsters. With a display of her true strength, she skillfully constrained the monster, as if it were a simple task. After a brief pause, fear dissipated, leaving only a sense of wonder at the extraordinary sight he had just experienced. Nonchalantly described his observation as something extraordinary, calling it magic. Using magic drained energy and exerted force. She mentioned that there were two kinds of magic, unique magic and acquired magic. His distinctive magic stemmed from his goblin heritage, essentially a natural advantage that didn't require any elaborate training. Acquired magic, on the other hand, was unique. Any monster could grasp it, but it required hard work and commitment. Nonchalantly insulted the giant-mouthed creature, declaring it worthless for having missed school. The monster shook with terror, yet remained unfazed. She announced her intention to teach, but also cautioned her. She warned him that if he failed to deliver results, she would take drastic measures against him. She even extended an opportunity for him to withdraw, knowing that his life truly hung in the balance. Wore a determined expression, signaling that he was fully committed to training under her guidance. Sayal wore a smirk, already certain that would fail, yet still decided to indulge him for the moment. She proposed that they go out for a meal, leaving feeling puzzled. She reminded him that in order to wield magic, it was crucial to harness energy. His monster force levels had plummeted to their lowest point. Typically, merely being in the spirit realm would help restore his force on its own. Had just arrived the previous night. His weight loss diet was failing to deliver the desired results. Concluded that he ought to be feeling ravenous. Did not particularly share that sentiment. As he continued, an unexpected wave of numbness washed over his body, making him feel as though he were under the influence of some powerful substance. Revealed that he had exhausted a significant portion of his monstrous energy. The earlier moment, when he had managed to flip that enormous, wide-mouthed creature, was still fresh in his mind. The only option left was to consume the vanquished beast. As stepped forward, his instincts surged to the forefront, and he felt an intense, insatiable hunger coursing through him, almost as if it were a dark, demonic force enveloping his very being. This deep-seated yearning was ignited by. What she had not foreseen was that greedy goblin instincts would hone in on her. She appeared much more appetizing. At that moment, leaped towards her, swiftly ensnared him with her magical powers. She was utterly taken aback by his boldness in attempting to devour her. Enraged, she prepared to bring him down a notch. Unexpectedly freed himself from the magical restraints, relying solely on his immense physical strength. His eyes grew large with surprise as disbelief washed over her. She had completely overlooked the fact that he was a goblin, and in reality they were like living shortcuts to victory. He recognized the sheer power he possessed. Made the choice to cease being agreeable. She unleashed a blood art technique. The arm of the formidable Demon King was called forth. The character unleashed a powerful energy blast in the style of Ha, aiming it directly at. Managed to escape the onslaught while felt no remorse whatsoever. After all, he had been the one to strike first. Deep down, held low expectations for. He had only recently begun to tap into his newfound abilities. Within the Goblin clan, only a select few were fortunate enough to achieve true enlightenment. The young mage was beginning to tap into the full extent of their extraordinary magic. It was rare for anyone to show such potential at such an early stage, but was indeed engaged in that very activity. Without a moment of doubt, removed his horn. The object morphed into a goblin's club, pulsating with a vibrant energy. Felt a mix of admiration and unease wash over her. Was not just any monster. She had earned her 9 tails at a young age, one when most monsters were still dependent on their mothers for nourishment. It typically required more than 1,000 years to achieve that, but was unique in its nature. She understood that if she relaxed her vigilance, even a single mistake could lead to her downfall. In that moment, felt a sense of calm, knowing that. Found himself nearly depleted of monster force, and he believed the victory was practically assured, or so she assumed. Suddenly radiated a foreboding presence, as if a protective force was being activated around him. In an instant, propelled himself ahead, altering his goblin's club as he charged forward. Electricity sparked and danced in the air as he executed a powerful lightning strike technique. Its response was immediate. The character called forth the Demon King's arm to intercept the incoming attack. A colossal hand reached out and seized club. He pulled him abruptly ahead and threw him down into the dirt as if he had a debt to settle with the ground. Was far from naive. She recognized that possessed an extraordinary resilience. One powerful slam failed to defeat him. She got ready to strike him once more. To her surprise, stood firm against the grasp of the Demon King's arm. It was believed that not a single soul could withstand even the slightest hint of the Demon King's power. However, did not adhere to the script. Using his sheer strength, pulled the goblin's club out with a fierce tug and, without a moment's pause, they altered it in the midst of the battle. He wielded it to strike the Demon King's arm with tremendous force, and the ground trembled violently from the impact of the strike. His eyes grew large with surprise. This power was anything but ordinary. The character made the choice to cease their game. She called forth a second Demon King arm and released it. A relentless flurry of punches aimed to overpower him. Skillfully, the blows with his club. In that instant, came to the understanding that even creatures with a century or 2 of experience were no match for. It became clear to her why goblins were feared and held such a dreadful reputation. A single issue lingered in the air. Felt as if his monstrous strength was almost completely exhausted. Realized that he would keep pushing himself until he shattered like a broken action figure. He released a deep sigh of relief. Resolved to bring the situation to a swift conclusion. With purpose, she summoned 5 of her tails. With a concentrated effort, she focused her energy to bring forth the upper half of the Demon King. As determined as always, propelled himself forward for yet another strike. At that moment, the Demon King had finished his games and with a powerful slash, was propelled through the air, soaring across the battlefield. The figure appeared worn and tattered, as if they were on the brink of collapse. Approached him, conveying that his own reckless pride had him perilously close to death's door. Beneath her calm exterior, she was bracing herself for the reprimand that was sure to deliver later. As she began to walk away, his faint voice called out for his mother. Came to a halt, a fleeting expression of sympathy crossing her features. With a heavy sigh, she lifted him effortlessly, and in one fluid motion. The fluid of motion enveloped him, flowing into him with a gentle caress. At that moment, C suddenly fell to the ground, unable to stay upright any longer. Clarified that the magic derived from her fox bead came at a cost, anticipating that he would compensate her for the resources she had provided. After some time, roused Grog from his slumber, and to his relief, Grog was very much alive. In his room, someone was lying down. As she stepped into the room, her eyes narrowed at him, a look that suggested she was questioning her past decisions. His grin broke free, as if he had just hit the jackpot. Later that day, expressed his regret for the way he had confronted her earlier. He described how he had been aware of everything happening around him, yet felt entirely powerless to move, as if some instinct had taken charge completely. Expressed regret for his impulsive actions, yet was not inclined to engage in any emotional discussions. She instructed him to finish the drink she had brought for him. Glanced at the drink with skepticism, questioning whether it might be some strange form of Oriental medicine. After taking a sip, felt a wave of regret wash over him. Curiosity struck him as he pondered the mystery of what he had just consumed. Dismissed him, insisting that it wasn't necessary for him to know. She urged him to complete it all, much like a worried mother insisting her child take their medicine. Shifting the conversation, brought up the topic of the giant-mouthed monster from before the escape was still the rightful owner. The fight was deemed relatively easy and now could almost be considered its guardian. Wished he could manage to keep the medicine down while talking, just like a grown-up, and not let it fly out of his mouth like a little child. Still struggling to understand the circumstances, inquired whether there was an alternative method to acquire monster force without having to consume other monsters. Chuckled at his ridiculous remarks. Had not completely embraced the concept of consuming monsters, but the reasoning behind it was straightforward. Monsters posed a danger to humanity, and if they had to be consumed for the sake of gaining power, then that was the way it had to be. Continued to search for other options. Shared that there was an alternative approach. The two had come to a mutual understanding about a confrontation. The frail monsters stood no chance, making them simple targets for hunters. Word had spread about goblin heritage, leading everyone to completely steer clear of him. Found himself not on the weak server but competing on the elite server, where he faced tougher opponents. After the giant-mouthed monster broke free, had prepared an alternative plan. She devised a plan and disclosed that a surprise awaited outside. Emerging from his room, his gaze settled. The creature, held back by invisible restraints, made the current title seem like a deceitful trick. Still trembling, absorbed explanation about how certain monsters succumb to their primal instincts. Had come perilously close to losing his humanity earlier, nearly transforming into nothing more than a savage creature. The creatures forfeited all claims to being considered true monsters. The paths were designated as shutter walks. Perched atop a tall building, observed with curiosity, pondering the object of his gaze. The shutter walk finally broke loose. The beast sprang forward, but managed to evade the strike just in time. Found herself entertained, as if she were enjoying a show on Netflix. She had fully anticipated that he would become paralyzed with fear and face the consequences, but to her astonishment, he continued to dodge every attack. This specific shutter walk had gained a reputation for its insatiable greed. He aggressively seized other monsters and consumed them to enhance his strength as a monster. Pushing beyond his boundaries, he lost control and descended into a state of complete rage. All that raw strength was now directed toward. Noticed that the figure was continuously evading his attempts, but soon came to the understanding that he was unable to consciously call forth his goblin club. She didn't have high hopes. After all, his ability to control his monstrous strength was still lacking. The creature towered with unmatched strength, making it clear that was at a disadvantage. Understood that genuine instinct emerges when one confronts death directly. At that moment, positioned himself in a way that came to a halt. With unexpected accuracy, he delivered a sharp blow to the shutter walk. In the past, had given boxing a shot. The coach, taken aback by the young athlete's inherent talent, inquired whether he had aspirations of achieving fame on the level of KSI. Sole focus rested on a single goal, shedding pounds. After a bit of convincing, decided to train with him. His dedication differed from that of other martial artists. His sole focus was on shedding pounds. Fueled by his unyielding determination, refused to surrender. Throughout the years, had experimented with an astonishing 16 different sports. 7 individuals were engaged in various combat sports. Faced a heartbreaking reality. He had never managed to shed any pounds. Thanks to his goblin ancestry, all those abilities had remained intact within him, and at last he was ready to put them into action. In the moment, released a rapid series of attacks, tapping into every bit of his fighting knowledge. The shutter walk had no hope of success, and found itself being overwhelmed. Found herself bewildered by the unfolding events, struggling to grasp the situation. In a matter of seconds, the creature crumpled to the earth. Gasping for breath, stood triumphantly above the scene, but soon found himself confronted with a fresh challenge. He wondered how on earth he was supposed to eat it. After vanquishing the shutter walk, focused intently on herself, her eyes narrowing in contemplation, was determined to understand him better. She pondered whether he had employed martial arts techniques that weren't specifically intended to combat a creature with such an absurd physique and immense power. Despite having just transformed into his monstrous form, he was already managing to pull off such feats, with an invisible shield of plot armor protecting him. At that moment, broke through her spiraling thoughts, playfully flexing his imaginary muscles and inquiring about what he should do next. He felt completely certain that victory was his. Struggled to suppress her laughter as she informed him that she would gladly engage in conversation once he achieved a victory. The seemingly vanquished sprang to life, lunging forward to sink its teeth into his shoulder. He ripped away a piece of flesh as if it were a late-night treat. Gazed intently at the part of himself that was absent. The character found themselves completely engulfed in a wave of panic. As struggled to regain his footing, the beast unleashed a fierce uppercut, propelling through the air and across the battlefield, reminiscent of Team Rocket's iconic launches. Remained frozen in place, astonished that he hadn't attempted to dodge or block, despite having ample time to do so. She quickly realized that the true reason behind humanity's fear of injuries was not the pain itself. The idea of losing limbs haunted him. The mere thought of it was enough to leave someone like deeply shaken. At that moment, his injury began to mend. In a split second, the Shudderwalk lunged toward him once more with a swift slash. The injury began to heal almost immediately. His eyes widened with a spark of newfound confidence as he gracefully dodged the incoming strike. His determination became as unyielding as if he had just experienced a defining moment like a hero. Lightning crackled around his arm, delivered a powerful punch, sending the Shudder soaring across the battlefield. His arm pulsed with pain as if he had struck a truck, yet a surge of confidence filled him. Was not so overconfident that he overlooked the fact that the Shudderwalk had the ability to regenerate as well. He partially anticipated an ambush until stepped closer, observing that its most recent blow had inflicted significant harm, and the creature would take time to heal. She was curious about the sensation of wielding magic while having control over his body. Blinked in disbelief, astonished that he had actually employed magic. Advised him to relax and take it easy. Disclosed that his ability to regenerate was a form of magic. His previous strike had combined both magical energy and brute force. Inquired whether he sensed anything out of the ordinary. Suddenly confessed that he was experiencing a peculiar sensation, akin to an electric shock. Acknowledged that it was indeed a form of magic. Was still adjusting to the situation, but she had anticipated that. This was precisely the reason she had pushed him to face she wanted to prompt him to unlock his magic. She took a moment to praise him for his efforts. Gestured with her hand, channeling her telekinetic powers to pull the lifeless form of the closer to her. Realized it was the moment to complete the task at hand. Declared that he was prepared, yet remained skeptical, knowing that ending a life for the first time was always a daunting task. She urged him to make the move in a single, decisive blow. Any delay could allow the creature to launch a final, frantic assault. She indicated the upper part of her abdomen, where the magic core, often referred to as the magic bead, resided. The initial attempt at everything proved to be a challenge. Took a deep breath, gathering his courage. He delivered a precise blow, bringing the situation to a swift conclusion. Inquired whether he had taken hold of the magic bead. He explained that by swallowing it, the magic of the beast would become his own. Swiftly consumed it as if it were a burst of energy. His brow furrowed as he anticipated an impressive surge of power. A bird unexpectedly settled on his shoulder. His heart raced as the bird began to speak, causing him to lose his balance and stumble backward in shock. In an instant, the bird changed into a woman. Let out a deep sigh, fully aware of the identity of the person in question. The girl introduced herself as Salmi, expressing her delight at meeting the notorious half-goblin. She asserted that she was a friend of. Took a moment to introduce himself as he encountered a team. Clearly unimpressed, inquired about Salmi's intentions. Salmi was revealed to have a part-time job was undeniably developing feelings, and it seemed he was on the verge of accumulating even more losses. Salmi revealed her purpose for being there was to manage the rewards for the 2 monsters that had been defeated. Dismissed the idea, declaring that could take all the rewards for themselves. Salmi leaned in, her curiosity piqued as she scrutinized, feeling a sense of admiration for his untapped potential. She playfully poked fun at, curious if could potentially pose a danger to her during the ancestral ceremony. Elle let out a derisive snort, certain that would only last a minute. Salmi felt uncertain, yet she recognized a significant amount of untapped potential that made the situation intriguing. Salmi flashed a teasing smile as she presented with a decision regarding his reward. He faced a choice: return home or embark on the journey to transform into a more powerful monster. The following day reached out to them with a phone call. A friend from the human realm felt the weight of stress pressing down on him as he thought about skipping classes. He quickly recognized that it was causing his concern. Was unable to share the specifics, as doing so was against the spirit of the rules. In that realm, he found himself in need of a favor. Upon hearing's unusual request, fell asleep, puzzled by why he appeared to be high so early in the day. Hoped that would inform his mother that he had spent a month at family martial arts center to shed some pounds. Pointed out to him that entering the center wasn't something everyone could do casually. Remained unfazed by the situation. Always genuine, assured that he would lend an ear without passing any judgment if there was an issue. Before had the chance to dwell on it, Salmi interjected, cautioning that revealing the truth to humans would violate the rules of the spirit realm. Dismissed the call and ended it abruptly. Found himself wishing that his fears were unfounded. Was taken aback upon discovering that he had the opportunity to go back to the human realm, despite clear warning that such a return was forbidden. Salmi, however, asserted a different story, and found himself nearly convinced by her words, yet there was still a lingering doubt. She pondered whether she was merely another tick influencer seeking fame through deception. Pondered for a moment, ultimately choosing to delay his return home. He realized that if he failed to control his monstrous powers at that moment, even more dire consequences could arise. Following the battle with it became evident. He recognized that he required genuine strength to confront the challenges ahead. Salmi couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for. In the scene, a character radiated strong MC vibes, drawing attention. Off to the side, observed the interaction and playfully remarked that Salmi seemed to be enjoying herself a bit too much while teasing. At that moment, uncovered Salmi's deception, making it clear that there had never been a reward that would let return home. Salmi had been teasing him all along. Salmi attempted to justify her actions by asserting that interacting with others in such a manner was simply part of human culture. The two girls casually engaged in light conversation. Found himself deeply infatuated with Salmi, hanging on to every word that was spoken. As they talked, Salmi revealed her disappointment that had not yet read the book she had given her, a crucial step before could venture into the human realm. At that moment, Salmi made up her mind to spend the day out with. Fed up with their antics, granted permission as if she were bestowing's hand in marriage. Without any prior indication, Salmi changed into a massive bird. She proudly displayed her ability to traverse different realms. Despite the stipulation that if anything went awry, deemed the unqualified monster would bear the consequences. Barely had a moment to feel fear before Salmi lifted him off the ground and dashed away. Expressed his gratitude to Salmi for allowing him to borrow her phone. He looked at her and inquired if he was genuinely fine with receiving only a single call. Revealed that the only family he had was his mother, who had gone away on a business trip. He felt a sense of relief, as he knew her constant nagging would have been intolerable. In an effort to show her gratitude to Salmi, proposed that they go out for dinner together. Instantly, Salmi's face brightened with excitement. She disclosed her long-held desire to experiment with something made from scratch. A short while later, prepared a stunning meal, showcasing a surprising dish worthy of leaving Salmi utterly amazed. She had seemingly only ever eaten takeout, or the disappointing lunches provided at school. Felt a wave of surprise wash over her. Salmi mentioned in a nonchalant manner that she had attended school in the human realm, prompting to realize that he was familiar with the institution. She confessed that she had only begun that year and didn't have any friends. Found it hard to believe her. She exuded such an overwhelming sense of confidence and quirky energy that it seemed impossible for her to feel lonely. After dinner, Salmi presented with his true reward. In the spirit realm, there existed a remarkable device known as a monster storage, which was like a smartphone but far more impressive. The device had the ability to show anything required with just a simple swipe of a finger. The system had the ability to store and retrieve items without considering their weight, ultimately simplifying life for everyone. With some practice, they would eventually master it. Had accumulated a stack of spirit realm coins, along with a trove of goblin treasure. The item had the power to exhibit different abilities by channeling the strength of monsters. Was typically expected to collect only the coins. Had fully embraced the role of a generous benefactor, offering additional incentives because he had faith in. Was astonished that believed he had any possibility of winning. His true desire was for a fellow local to emerge victorious in the king ancestral ceremony, purely for the sake of bragging rights. Salmi conveyed that during the previous ancestral ceremony, a creature from their territory had nearly defeated the reigning king. The creatures hailed from the goblin clan, and that beast was the mightiest the area had ever encountered. Continued to find it hard to accept that he belonged to that world at all. She hoped that this was nothing more than a vivid fever dream. Salmi felt differently, believing that had quickly adjusted. His determination made a lasting impact on her. She urged him to rise and claim the title of king. They aimed to safeguard the human realm and uphold the existing law that prevented monsters from breaching their world. His attention was abruptly drawn to something unusual. An emergency alert popped up on Salmi's monster storage. Intrigued, he inquired about its significance. Salmi explained in a relaxed manner that during emergencies, the system alerts the monsters nearby. The occurrence at that moment suggested that a monster had either violated the established rules or caused harm to a human. At first, she dismissed it, as emergencies were uncommon. A sudden realization struck her, causing her eyes to widen in surprise as she paused. The relaxed atmosphere had come to an end. Later that night, clicked his fingers and the monster's storage seemed to be showing off, as if performing a clever party trick. He retrieved the goblin treasure, intrigued by its functionality. At that moment, directed his gaze toward He glanced at the clock, recalling the conversation he had with Salmi earlier. She had informed him that she would return by 10 o'clock p.m. and asked him to wait patiently for her arrival. Before departing, she nonchalantly suggested that he should feel free to share his thoughts with her during their next conversation. His unease began to surface as he realized that they had long surpassed the time they had agreed upon. A sense of worry washed over him as he feared that something might have happened to her. He came to a startling realization. It was simply Elle that had prevented him from getting her number. Found himself deep in contemplation, his thoughts beginning to spiral out of control. He pondered whether his goblin heritage was linked to his absent father. He wondered what his father would think if he ever discovered that he had goblin blood running through his veins. A sudden jolt coursed through, as if a hidden instinct had awakened within him. He realized he was not alone, even while remaining alert. In another part of the city, within a shadowy alley, a malevolent spirit had the human trapped beneath its oppressive force, just moments away from transforming into monster. Just as things seemed dire, Salmi made a dramatic entrance, unleashing a spirit gun with the intensity of a working extra hours. She grumbled to herself about repeatedly encountering the same malevolent spirit. She felt anxious, fearing that she might deplete her supply of feathers. The malevolent spirit dashed away in a hurry. He observed as she hurried to assist the wounded individuals. Y's tragic death left a profound impact on the group, leaving them deeply traumatized. Salmi informed him that his friend was still alive, and that an ambulance was en route. He kept his eyes fixed on the camera with a fierce intensity. A massive malevolent spirit hovered ominously above them, positioned directly above Salmi. She spun around, narrowly escaping a fate that could have sent her straight to the afterlife, but a timely intervention pulled her back from the brink. Gou, her unexpected hero, appeared suddenly, reminiscent of a typical overpowered anime character. He warned her that if she were defeated by such a weak monster, it would ruin their family name. Salmi lifted her shoulders in a casual shrug, mentioning that her family wasn't particularly remarkable. She playfully remarked that she was certain her father would come to her rescue. Gou advised her against using that term, but she remained firm in her choice. He dismissed her ramblings and used hypnosis magic to alter the memories of the human victim. It was quite an impressive feat, especially since it wasn't even a skill he naturally possessed. Salmi felt a sense of mild admiration as he contemplated whether he was truly serving as the representative of his clan at the ancestral ceremony. Gou dismissed the comment, boasting about having vanquished 2 evil spirits, and he curiously considered how many she had managed to defeat. Salmi disclosed that she had withdrawn the amount of 24. She clarified that the leashes attached to the monsters indicated they were under someone's control. Her rough estimation indicated that 7 people had lost their lives, while 50 others had sustained injuries. She wished that anyone who found this situation entertaining was prepared to face severe consequences. At that moment, disclosed that it was Salmi was not seeking entertainment. Instead, she desired to grasp the entire essence of the situation. The Gou disclosed an ancient secret that had been hidden for centuries. The goblins consumed humans to quickly enhance their power. Salmi stared in disbelief at what seemed to be the most powerful monster protein shake ever created. Gou clarified that consuming humans served as a rapid boost in strength. No one mentioned it anymore, as it had become. The plan was to plunge the human realm into disarray. For the majority of monsters, the human realm seemed unworthy of the hassle that came with the qualification test, leaving only oddballs like them to endure the process. As they approached the ancestral ceremony, certain monsters sought to enhance their power by any means possible, often putting their lives on the line to defy the established rules. Gou believed that Salmi should be aware of this information, given her employment with. Recently, many monsters had met their demise in their reckless pursuit of rapid strength. Remarked that if he were responsible for the attacks, he certainly would not have created such a chaotic scene. He intended to stealthily seize humans, one at a time, and savor them later on. Salmi conceded that it was a truly cowardly act to unleash malevolent spirits to carry out the wrongdoer's commands. Suspected that the current perpetrator possessed the skill to command around 100 malevolent spirits. At that moment, Salmi felt a deep instinct stirring within her, warning that something was gravely amiss. She hurried away, instructing Gou to take care of the cleanup. At home, he stood on the balcony, sensing that something was watching him. His instincts, honed from his goblin heritage, were alerting him to an unseen presence. A monstrous figure stealthily approached him, as if he had stumbled upon an incredible bargain on Black Friday. The monster surged forward, aiming to strike, but narrowly dodged the attack at the last moment. With a swift motion, they unleashed a powerful magical strike. Had gained insight from past encounters with similar attacks, and as a result, he had become more cautious. Due to his goblin traits, he found it impossible to be swayed by similar tricks. After some time had passed, inhaled deeply, his mind drifting back to the story. A sudden, frigid shiver ran down his spine moments before the assault came from behind. Found himself fortunate. That peculiar moment allowed him to sidestep a collision with his father. Without thinking, he flung the assailant aside, wishing that no one else would become entangled in the chaos. Searched desperately for the monster's body, but it was nowhere to be found. Out of nowhere, the monster resurfaced, seizing him by the neck end. He boasted with a sense of superiority that he had lulled all the humans nearby into a deep slumber. The monster insisted that it was crucial to tidy up more effectively as it tightened its grip around's throat. Slithered in with a lively energy, curious to find out if was indeed the goblin everyone had been talking about. Examined his monster force and magic level, feeling a wave of disappointment wash over him as he realized his abilities were merely average. The monster seized and pulled him away from the balcony. With a swift motion, he brought his opponent crashing down to the ground, reminiscent of a dramatic WWE finishing move. His conversation shifted, uncovering the elaborate cover story he had crafted with great intelligence. The humans would simply assume it was an explosion caused by a gas pipe. The true mastermind behind the crisis faced directly. He realized that he was in serious trouble if he had to face this guy in a one-on-one battle. Suggested too that he might as well surrender and let himself be devoured, claiming it would be less painful that way. Suddenly, the creature revealed a picture of and his mother, assuring everyone that it would not harm her. Before Snake could complete his thought, surged ahead and he delivered a powerful blow straight to his arrogant face. Regrettably, it turned out that everything was a component of intricate strategy in 4D chess. Made direct contact with him, triggering the monster's poison ability. This power only activated when his adversary engaged in physical touch. Unwittingly stepped directly into a deadly trap. found himself unable to move. The monster voiced its grievances regarding the injustice of the weak always falling victim to the strong. It mocked, suggesting that perhaps the outcome would have changed if he had utilized the goblin's treasure. At that moment, morphed into an enormous serpent, ready to swallow as if he were a meal delivered by DoorDash. Felt unprepared to be featured on Snake Talk's side menu. Regardless of the venom, he gathered the remaining strength within him and propelled himself forward. Unleashed a powerful blast of energy. Managed to narrowly evade the attack. Tog quickly struck back in response. With a swift strike, was thrust into a fresh manga panel. He found it remarkable that was capable of moving at all, much less launching an attack. Out of the blue, a blade unexpectedly sliced through the air and hit. The young man spun around, his brow furrowing in confusion, as a cloaked figure started to recite a mysterious incantation. A jolt of lightning coursed through Snake Talk's frame. The enigmatic figure moved closer, radiating an undeniable confidence, prepared to take charge. Stood in disbelief, realizing that the shaman was armed with a weapon. They found themselves in a situation where their only option was to charm a vulnerable ghost. Snake Talk came to the realization that the masked man was no ordinary shaman, leaving him to ponder how the mysterious figure had managed to catch up with him. Understood that if reinforcements were on the horizon, prolonging the battle could lead to him being the one in peril. He performed a blood sacrifice to summon a formidable evil spirit, which he intended to use as his secret weapon during the ancestral ceremony. He unleashed it upon the masked shaman. As they made their plans, the thought of enjoying for dessert lingered in their minds. The malevolent spirit hurled a fireball, yet the shaman remained unshaken. He sprinted ahead and cleaved the fireball into 2 pieces. With a swift motion, he split the spirit right in 2, as if it were on sale. Stood still, his mind racing as he struggled to comprehend that his final move had been erased in an instant. At that moment, the shaman coolly drove a blade into his head. Without a moment's hesitation, the battle came to an abrupt end. Writhed in pain, the shaman glanced at and inquired about his presence there. Was able to identify the voice of the man wearing the mask. The masked man removed his disguise, revealing his face. He unveiled his identity as. Sudden appearance took everyone by surprise. After a brief pause filled with quiet, pondered over the secret behind survival from the Snake Talk's attack. Panting heavily, found it difficult to find the words to reply. Suddenly realized that had fallen victim to the poison from Snake Talk's power. Possessed some emergency medicine, yet it proved insufficient for his healing. He contemplated seeking assistance. Unexpectedly started to recover by himself. Felt a wave of shock wash over him, but in that fleeting moment of distraction, he suddenly recognized that he was recognized that the conversation about snakes had waned. Later that evening, he took the time to recount all the events that had unfolded. Paid close attention, astonished that he had overlooked half-goblin nature all this time. At that moment, started to produce strange noises reminiscent of an Ohio NPC, as if he had just taken an excessive amount of a stimulant. Felt a sense of surprise wash over him as he discovered that was, in fact, a shaman. At that moment, revealed that his family had a long history of preparing to rid the world of supernatural creatures. He remained in the game for just another 6 months. Felt a wave of surprise wash over him when he realized that was aware of the ancestral ceremony. His curiosity piqued. He inquired whether it was a frequent occurrence for monsters to assault humans in the realm of mortals. Clarified that such occurrences were uncommon, noting that for centuries, monsters had steered clear of humans. Recently, however, everything had shifted. Disclosed that humans had transformed into the prime source of experience points for monsters. In recent months, there had been a noticeable increase in the number of individuals reported missing in crowded urban areas. Although there was no concrete evidence linking monsters to the disappearances, numerous bloodstains were discovered close to the houses of those who had gone missing. It was the first occasion that a monster had shown itself without any disguise. Without warning, felt the presence of someone drawing near. Shortly after, Salmi made her entrance. She felt a deep concern for, overwhelmed by guilt, for being captivated by Snake Talks in 4D chess. Quickly instructed her to stop talking. She felt a chill run down her spine as he warned her of the consequences, making it clear that he would not hesitate to take action if she dared to approach any nearer. hoped that would take a moment to relax and ease his anxiety, but was already fully immersed in his confident persona. Asserted that Salmi had violated the law and issued a verbal warning, urging Salmi to take a step back. Felt no obligation to issue a verbal warning before making his move, yet he was eager to show off in front of the girl he liked. Insisted that creatures like monsters had no place in the world of humans. The creatures appeared human, yet he perceived them as possible dangers, even suggesting that they could consume their own species. Despite goblin heritage, regarded him as human and felt no need to ask for permission to enter the human realm. Salmi understood's perspective. She reflected on the fact that belonged to the spirit realm, and she was determined to join him. Intense aura made it clear to her that facing him alone would end badly for her. She announced that she was responsible for and intended to bring him along with her. Felt a surge of displeasure and himself to launch an attack. Shoved him aside and swiftly snatched the blade. With curiosity, looked over the weapon, intrigued by its intricate engraving. Began to feel a sense of doubt and suspicion. The thought crossed her mind that perhaps was under someone else's influence. Shared that he had never caused harm to humans. However, he revealed that earlier that day, he had consumed a monster which left feeling devastated. Emphasized that his intention was to continue feasting on monsters, not on humans. Attempted to calm him, assuring him that he would keep both him and his mother safe. Then disclosed his intention to ascend as the king. Found herself puzzled by the absurd remarks that was making. He attempted to make him see reason. Had firmly resolved his thoughts and reassured, insisting that there was no need for concern as it was something that fit him well. In the end, gave the freedom to make his own choices. He knew that if he ever overstepped, he would make it his mission to eliminate any trace of it himself. Felt perfectly fine about it. As prepared to leave, he issued a final warning, stating that if anything were to befall, he would return and eliminate Salmi as well. Once departed, Salmi felt a wave of panic wash over her, almost losing control as the intense energy radiating from enveloped her. At that moment arrived, affirming that was a top-tier shaman among all shamans. Salmi felt a wave of shock wash over her as she realized that had been following her. Inquired of whether he was the goblin everyone had been talking about, then took a step closer. In that instant, gazed at and beheld a celestial creature revered by both humans and monsters. Reached out his hand for a handshake and informed that in order to claim the title of king, he must first defeat him. Came to a sudden halt, aware of a shift in the atmosphere. His energy felt strangely unsettling. He extended his hand for a handshake, just before their fingers could make contact. Salmi called out too, urging him to halt. She was obviously angry with, especially considering all that had just endured. The poor guy was already experiencing the most terrible Tuesday imaginable. Remained indifferent and disregarded the situation. After hearing boast about his ambitions to become the king, he felt a mischievous urge to play with him. Without a moment's pause, he took hold of his hand and sprang into action. The character initiated a blood art technique, which allowed them to teleport away in an instant. After some time, they emerged once again beneath the glow of the moon. She fought to maintain her composure, yet marveled at the fact that he remained standing. Inquired about his intentions. Skillfully the question, and nonchalantly inquired whether enjoyed playing computer games. Mentioned that he didn't play games very often, then inquired about the types of games that interested him. Responded by mentioning action RPG. Goya felt a wave of relief and happiness upon receiving the news. Before had a chance to comprehend his surroundings, he felt a presence lurking behind him. He managed to evade at the last moment. At that moment, a shower of sharp icicles came raining down. Navigated through the crowd as if he were dodging a tax collector. Wore a sly smile as he praised for his impressive footwork and his ability to make quick decisions. At that moment, it was remarkable ability to adapt that stood out the most. Each battle he faced had contributed to his growth. Unexpectedly soared into the air. He unleashed a powerful blast from his cane. Despite his efforts, he remained relentless, launching a series of powerful strikes aimed at defeating while staying vigilant. Mastered the art of magic, experiencing a thrilling jolt that energized his entire body. He calculated that roughly 60% of fuel remained in the tank. He began to comprehend the use of magic, likening it to a stamina bar due to the earlier assaults he had faced, and the moment the number reached 0, the game would come to an abrupt end. Shielded himself with a sturdy barrier made of icicles, and it dawned on him that he had misjudged abilities. At that moment, felt a curiosity about his intentions, wondering if he intended to consume him, as he sensed no ill will emanating from him. Explained that his intentions were not to consume him, but he found his delusions about becoming the king unappealing. Began to question whether truly understood the significance of being the king. Believed that the king of the was the ruler of all monsters. Encouraged him to explore further. Clarified that monsters were not similar to humans. Instead, their actions were guided solely by instinct. One couldn't simply place a crown upon their head and anticipate unwavering loyalty. The king did not embody the usual image of a ruler. Instead, he served as a living safeguard for his people. The monsters had come to a consensus, agreeing to follow a certain rule in order to ensure their own survival. Prompted to envision a human leader. The proposal aimed to create a law that would prohibit everyone from consuming meat. Felt confident that the majority of humans would rebel against such a law, leading to a state of chaos. Somehow, the monsters had adhered to the king's rule for a total of 6 years, 6 months, and 6 days. Was convinced that the monsters' patience had reached its limit. If the upcoming king were to impose the same law, it was likely that the majority would choose to disregard it. Finally understood the truth. No matter how powerful the king was, the title held no value if no one paid attention to it. Felt a sense of relief as he saw that had grasped the situation. Found fault with his earlier remark, considering it both reckless and filled with arrogance. Realized that Salmi's presence was boosting his confidence. Inquired whether would prefer him to retract his earlier statement, and enthusiastically agreed to the idea. Had initially regarded as worthless, but now he recognized the potential within him. He was so impressed that he proposed a partnership, asking to assist him in becoming the king. In exchange, he vowed to never bring harm to the humans who were dear to. At that moment, inquired about the true extent of strength. He acknowledged that he wasn't the strongest beyond his own territory, yet he believed he had enough skill to make a difference. Extended his arm. The character nodded in acceptance of the proposal. Took hold of his hand, feeling relieved that their thoughts aligned. As the bond between them deepened, their shared moment of camaraderie felt truly wonderful. Summoned his magical powers and he utilized the limited resources at his disposal to turn over. With a powerful magical strike, unleashed a sudden offensive. He remained motionless, feeling as if his entire body had gone numb. He exhausted the majority of his monster energy during his last strike, leaving him unable to continue the battle. Appearing as though he was on the brink of becoming a villain, struggled to comprehend that had truly crossed such a line. Just in the nick of time, he employed a natural defensive skill to protect himself. Acknowledged that had their difference in monster strength been even slightly less, might have truly consumed him. With a sly grin, he inquired of whether he had any final words to share. Spoke calmly, expressing that he was ready to be consumed. At that moment, rose to his feet, asserting that he was still capable of battling. His eyes gleamed with a lively spark. Tilted his head in amusement as he observed struggling to keep his balance. Extended his hand and offered it to see. He placed a firm hand on his shoulder, admiring his determination. Found himself in a state of confusion. Expressed his support, hoping that he would rise to become the next king. Pondered the reason behind sudden changes, as if he were playing a dating simulation game. At that moment, disclosed that ever since he was a child, he had a strong dislike for the Night of Monsters, finding it to be consistently loud and disorderly. In the human world, things were quite relaxed. Although some individuals occasionally behaved in a silly manner, their overall lifestyle was calm and serene. Had a deep passion for games and Manhwa, 2 forms of entertainment that were absent in the spirit realm. He held the conviction that without the presence of games and Manhwa, life would be filled with sorrow. Observed something unusual, spoke of himself as if there were 2 versions of him. Contended that ought to take the throne as the king, yet declined the suggestion. He felt no desire for the throne, yet he acknowledged that their region had the greatest chance of seizing it. Found himself facing a dilemma. He found himself in competition with elite monsters, creatures that had possessed great strength from the moment they were born. Pondered whether there was familial pressure associated with the elite monster. Eventually disclosed that when a family produced a talented offspring, they would compel that child to take on the role of the king. In a scenario where the child is not in agreement, the decision was made to eliminate the younger generation. Realized in that instant that the most painful fate for anyone would be to turn against their own family. His exceptional talent made him an ideal choice for the position of king. Despite the absence of family burdens holding him back, he still aspired to become the king. Found himself puzzled by his infatuation with him. At that moment, showed up and made his delivery. In a swift motion, a wrestler executed a aim directly at. With a powerful force, he was thrust down into the ground, his face meeting the dirt. She delivered another swift kick to him, sending him sprawling across the battlefield. She moved with such intensity, it felt as if she were trying out for a role in the next Dragon Ball film. She transformed into her full state, readying her natural ability to completely defeat him. Made an effort to halt her movement. She realized it was too late when she released a barrage of feather darts. Felt a surge of panic, yet Salmi reassured him with a steady voice, explaining that the attack would miss since had already slipped away. Found himself pondering the identity of. Salmi uncovered that the he had battled was not the true, but rather a manifestation of a split personality. Hailed from the Black Tortoise clan, a remarkable creature that came into existence from the fusion of a snake and a turtle. The story began with an unremarkable turtle that discovered a hidden divine power when. The character focused on mastering the balance of yin and yang within the monster force. Later, at home, Salmi elaborated that the offspring of the Black Tortoise possessed remarkable natural talents. They had to endure rigorous training to reach their full potential. The outcome revealed dual nature, embodied in the form of a snake. Believed that his personality was rather decent. The snake, despite its appearance, harbored no malicious intentions. The action was spontaneous and focused on the tactics of battle. The secondary turtle personality often yielded to the dominant one, much to Salmi's discontent. She found it frustrating that the main personality could assert control at any moment. Some individuals were against serving as a representative, and this was one of the reasons for their opposition. After revealing the shocking details of the lore, Salmi glanced at and inquired whether he had gathered his belongings. She reassured him that there was no need to stress about being tardy for any commitments. Found himself preoccupied with thoughts about the conversation revolved around the issue of the damaged balcony. At that moment, appeared as if he had been observing them from the shadows all along. He disclosed that there were individuals ready to take care of the situation. Salmi was informed that she could go ahead and leave first. Salmi attempted to stand up for, but expressed a desire to speak with. They were taken aback. Out of nowhere, appeared in the room, exuding an aura that suggested she was right at home. Inquired whether she was allowed to be in his house. Nonchalantly remarked that had pulled her into the situation. His expression shifted to one of seriousness as he disclosed that 50 malevolent spirits had vanished from their realm and begun to assault innocent civilians in the streets. After successfully fending off the attackers, began to suspect that someone had intentionally drawn out, aiming to set a trap for. Salmi inquired about the true objective behind their actions. Revealed that a minimum of 200 people had already disappeared. The estimate could reach as high as 500. Salmi stood in shock, yet felt assured that if the offender hailed from their area, they would be able to locate them. Nodded in agreement. It became apparent that creatures from distant lands had probably entered their territory, making it difficult to track their movements. Realized just how dire the situation could become if it continued to deteriorate for 6 consecutive months. At that moment, revealed a surprising twist. Their qualifications were not the same as everyone else's. Their only task was to apprehend the wrongdoer. The following morning, found himself lost in contemplation, questioning the reasons behind his decision to send away. A portion of him carried the weight of responsibility, worried that might not return. Suddenly materialized as if out of thin air, nonchalantly questioning why he had not answered his attempts to contact him. Appeared as if he had just encountered a solitary shark, while playfully mocked him. Later, she found herself at her restaurant. was excessively noisy, after explained the reason for his presence in the human realm. Urged him to speak more quietly, conveyed that he accepted the conditions set before him and intended to remain in the human realm. Was convinced that remained unaware of his true nature as a monster. To be fair, had only discovered his monstrous identity the day prior. At that moment, released the names, and, uttering a series of words that resembled an incantation more than a mere categorization of monsters, clarified that every symbol stood for a particular status of a monster. The Sioux represented the lowest class, a category where the majority of the monsters were found. Despite the inherent risks, their threat level was comparable to that of untamed animals. Armed with weapons, humans found it simple to manage them, even in the absence of magic. The presence of guns would have made it a perfect scenario for a school shooter. Monsters that loomed above Sioux presented an entirely different challenge. The Go-class monsters possessed the physical strength equivalent to at least 100 humans. However, even if 1,000 humans banded together, they would ultimately find themselves buried 6 feet deep. Found himself pondering just how frightening the upper classes might be. Struggled to provide a straightforward response. Nevertheless, he disclosed that monsters of the class possessed strength that was tenfold that of Go. If the law prohibiting monsters from crossing into the human realm were ever violated, the world would plunge into chaos in an instant. Pointed out that just one Go-class monster had the power to destroy their entire town. Fortunately, was unlikely to come across Shin or the formidable class monsters, as they seldom bent the rules. Cautioned against getting involved in the search for the missing people, suggesting instead that he should come and stay at his home to stay safe. Felt assured that the shamans or other creatures would handle the problem effectively. Inquired about the class that he believed Snake Talk belonged to. Disclosed that it had not yet reached maturity, categorizing it within the mid-tier Go class. Mentioned that the energy of the evil spirit known as Snake Talk was far more powerful than his own. Had Snake Talk possessed even a fraction of the control over that power, and would have surely met their end. Came to the realization that was likely just a low-tier class monster, at most. He cautioned him against getting involved in Snake Talk, knowing that would undoubtedly retaliate. Spoke with a sharpness that, while tough to hear, was essential for ensuring safety. Remained unconvinced and believed wholeheartedly that he could triumph over Snake Talk in their next encounter. He acknowledged that if it hadn't been for timely help previously, he would have been in serious trouble. However, he now felt more confident in understanding monster force and recognized that he was stronger than he had been before. Found himself puzzled by successive confidence, prompting him to rise to his feet. Believed he was on his way to school. Expressed his desire to regain clarity and to join him on his path. After some time had passed, they finally reached the sports center. The public remained unaware of its additional function. Stood in disbelief, realizing that a secret location was concealed in the basement. He playfully remarked that his family likely had ownership of just about everything. Explained that although the government held ownership of the location, the shamans were part of his family heritage. Was astonished to discover that the government had knowledge of the existence of monsters. At that moment, revealed that the government consistently surrounded itself with formidable shamans. The idea of government likely originated from the shamans themselves. In those days, when there were no dangers from monsters, the royal family established training halls for shamans, and this tradition was carried on by his family. The government was aware of the presence of monsters, shamans, and ancestral rituals, yet they chose to dismiss the significance of it all. Informed that he could approach him whenever he felt prepared. Needed to defeat him to demonstrate that he was powerful enough to control the monsters as he wished. Scanned his surroundings in search of a sword. Found no necessity for one. He felt certain that he could defeat using only his bare hands. Overcoming would demonstrate that had outdone. Challenged him, inviting him to come and face him. Felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him, his nerves getting the better of him. He suddenly surged ahead, poised to attack. In an instant, swatted his hand away and he unleashed a flurry of punches, sending him sprawling to the ground. Felt a sense of calm regarding his potential injuries, having witnessed his remarkable ability to bounce back quickly. Had yet to exert his full power, and came to the realization that was likely the host of a found himself contemplating whether he was fighting a futile battle. His body felt as if it had collided with a solid brick wall. Came to the understanding that would remain unharmed even if he chose to stop restraining himself. Came to the unsettling realization that posed a greater threat than he had initially believed. In an instant, charged at once more. His friend stood in disbelief at how fast was. His methods of attack remained unchanged. His knee was on a collision course with his face. However, found a way to lift him effortlessly. Employed a shamanic technique to establish some space between himself and the others. At that moment, stood in shock as he laid eyes on. Was seen gripping the goblin club, marking the first moment he had deliberately taken it into his hands. Found himself in a dire state, having depleted nearly all of his spiritual energy. The intensity of his final battle surged within him. Typically, he required a whole day of rest to restore his energy, and the process of recuperation was even more sluggish in the human world. His present condition mirrored the sensation he experienced when he first grasped the goblin club. In those days, he struggled to manage his own body, yet his senses remained incredibly keen. He found himself able to vividly remember that moment. Recalled having read about goblin clubs in old manuscripts, but he found himself questioning the accuracy of those tales. According to his observations thus far, the weapon appeared to be average. At that moment, charged ahead, aiming to land a blow on him. Didn't see the club as anything special. As soon as his strike connected, found himself compelled to raise a defense. Felt a sense of genuine admiration, realizing that if had been in peak condition, he would have stood no chance of blocking that strike. Recognizing his fatigue, devised a strategy to prolong the battle until finally succumbed to his weariness. In that moment, brought his goblin club crashing down against the ceiling. Felt a wave of confusion wash over him. Si Wu acknowledged his uncertainty about winning in close combat, so he chose to cling to the ceiling, aiming to harness the same power he had utilized in his previous battle. The goblin club underwent a remarkable transformation. With a swift motion, he threw the object toward, who just managed to block it in the nick of time. Did not allow him a second of respite, and hurled his weapon at him once more. Managed to escape just in time. Suddenly understood that the goblin club posed a genuine danger. He began to question whether intended to continue losing aura points. Was unconcerned about appearances, and had no problem resorting to underhanded tactics in a fight. The reason was simple: a victory was still a victory. Found himself at a loss for words, yet he couldn't argue with the validity of his perspective. Although they were friends, the idea of demonstrating his strength was enough to make one reconsider their loyalty. She had no qualms about knocking down. Propelled his weapon once more, compelling to increase his pace. Strikes grew increasingly difficult to evade. Despite his efforts to adjust to his martial arts techniques and increase his speed, he noticed that the distance between him and his opponent was diminishing. Had not anticipated the way, had cleverly led him off track. The characters anticipated a successful strike, confident they would achieve a perfect landing. His heart raced with anxiety as he feared he may have caused him harm. Remained composed as he intercepted the goblin's club in midair. She recited a spell and launched a counterattack. With a swift movement, severed a portion of his weapon with a single strike. Made an effort to counterattack while suspended in the air. Swiftly evaded the attack and... She recited yet another spell. He found himself unable to employ any significant techniques, as his reserves of spiritual energy were dwindling. At that moment, touched down on the ground. Suddenly burst into the scene. The character prepared to deliver a precise strike. In a moment of urgency, redirected the strike with his weapon. Quickly swung his weapon, cutting through the remnants of the goblin's club. Found himself with no means to defend against the impending defeat. It appeared that victory was all but assured for. As he prepared to execute his ultimate move, the attempt was unsuccessful, unable to close the distance to. In that moment of uncertainty, delivered a solid punch directly to his opponent's face. Felt a sense of confusion as he pondered the reason behind his reluctance to act, especially when it seemed he could bounce back without any difficulty. Went on to clarify that he had completely depleted his spiritual energy. His technique failed because it did not recognize as a monster. Felt the weight of irony crashing down on him, and to his astonishment, tears began to well up in sighs. As the day progressed, the streets were alive with activity. Remained silent, and couldn't shake off the discomfort he felt from anxious demeanor whenever they were together. Couldn't shake off the worry that his nose might still ache, and he feared that he might have inflicted emotional harm. Disclosed that the injury would mend itself in just one day. Had restrained his monstrous strength just before delivering a blow to him. At that moment, conceded his loss. Was informed that he was free to do as he wished, having emerged victorious in the wager. Extended his hand, too, offering him several gourds. They explained that the items could be activated by grasping them and reciting a mantra. In situations where emergencies arose, they could be forcefully broken open. Paused, feeling uncertain about whether to accept the items, as he was aware of the considerable effort had invested in creating them. Felt a wave of surprise wash over him as he realized that he could understand it, prompting him to question where he had picked up such knowledge. Elaborated on the energy contained within the gourds. He experienced a sensation that mirrored what he had felt during his battle with. The gourd served as a unique instrument within's family. During tranquil times, energy could be accumulated to prevent circumstances in which utilizing magic became challenging. The one who held it had the ability to draw upon its energy whenever necessary. Felt a surge of surprise as he realized that was able to perceive everything, despite the gourd being sealed to conceal one's energy. With a sense of curiosity, he requested to take a look at its palm. He attempted to decipher its destiny, but instead, he only repeated his own actions. The character realized that it was essentially a protective device for the storyline. Was convinced that if hadn't been a monster, he would have made an effort to bring him on board, as talent was truly remarkable. Recalled that was a half-goblin, which meant that there was still a glimmer of hope. Understanding his family's values, he realized they would never permit it due to. Was essentially transforming into, with the help of the Power Starter Pack. Regretted not having found earlier and released his grip. Felt a wave of astonishment wash over her as she discovered that, had the ability to read palms. Shifted the conversation, inquiring about the time he would start attending school. Mentioned that he required a new uniform and smirked as he envisioned how everyone at school would react to his new shoes. Found amusement in the way his expression betrayed his embarrassment. Glanced at his phone and suddenly understood that time had slipped away from him. Suggested going out to get some food. Felt a wave of astonishment at the news that they wouldn't be dining at home, especially since his cooking skills rivaled those of. Mentioned that he had a visitor at his place and wanted to make a quick stop before heading home. Advised him against pushing himself too hard. Considered that he could take care of the bill on their next outing. He cautioned against behaving timidly, warning that such actions would only invite bullying. After some time, found himself in a rundown part of town. He found himself questioning whether he had the correct address. Walked toward a massive door, and as soon as someone moved into view, he understood that they were a formidable monster. Out of nowhere, a strikingly beautiful woman approached him with a warm greeting. Introduced herself, revealing that she was the leader of the Rising Dark Moon Quarters. Introduced himself and mentioned that had sent him in that direction. She opened the door and welcomed him inside. The atmosphere appeared shadowy and foreboding upon first inspection, yet as one looked toward the distant end. The place had the appearance of a long-abandoned resort. Accepted the tea and pondered whether they remained in the realm of humans. In a secluded area linked to the human world, the hungry unrevealed found themselves. The isolation of this space allowed the air and energy to feel much more invigorating. She described how the place operated like a convenience store, designed to assist monsters in adjusting to life among humans. The thought brought to mind something it heard from. He picked up his rewards, felt a surge of joy, as if she had just encountered a potential client for her escort business. She clarified that he had the option to trade his coins for currency used in the human realm. The value of each coin reached an astonishing 3 million. Was in disbelief. He had transformed from being broke to living the high life. Showcased a selection of spirit pills for his examination. The creatures were employed to reclaim the rare monster energy that was hard to come by in the human world. The pills in question were made using ingredients sourced from the spirit realm, a knowledge that had been handed down through generations in their establishment. Felt an immediate urge to purchase them, intrigued by the array of vibrant colors displayed. Elaborated that the colors represented the rates of recovery and the associated prices. Chose the black pill, recognizing it as the one with the lowest effectiveness. Feeling hungry and with a serious expression, she realized she had deceived him. High-class monsters usually required 3 to 4 hours to digest a black pill. As a half-monster, was not expected to be capable of absorbing even a fraction of what was possible. He wondered if, against all odds, he could somehow succeed. He would regain his monstrous strength in just a few hours. Quickly swallowed the pill without hesitation. With a sudden flash of enchantment, his gaze expanded in surprise. Had taken in a tremendous quantity of monstrous energy. Found it hard to comprehend that a pill, which was thought to be of low quality, could have such an astounding impact. Moments before, on the opposite side of the lunar quarters, Dongwu focused on another customer, carefully serving him a fine drink. Took a sip of the drink and felt a sense of satisfaction, though his irritation was evident on his face. A man was pouring the drink instead of the lovely. He muttered to himself, puzzled about her delayed return. Shared that she had visited a guest whom had mentioned. UCM arched an eyebrow, intrigued and eager to discover more about the visitor. Disclosed that it was a half-goblin. His expression darkened instantly at the mention. He let out a derisive scoff, clearly irritated to have to hear about that failure once more. Was puzzled by his decision to bring a halfling into the spirit realm, especially since he had permitted the creature to take part in the ascension ceremony. Remained silent, leading to believe that he was uninterested, prompting to take action and create some excitement. With a sneer, he ridiculed, bringing up the fact that he too was nothing more than halfling trash. Let out a derisive laugh, declaring that the moon quarters served merely as a refuge for halflings who had no other place to turn. He reluctantly acknowledged that it was a clever idea, a space where they could feel valued and recognized. He firmly stated that they would never be acknowledged as genuine monsters. Dongwu disregarded the insult, letting it slide off him like water off a duck's back. She calmly suggested that she could refill his cup. Clicked his tongue in annoyance, feeling as though he were merely a background character serving drinks. He then inquired about when he would be allowed to leave. Dongwu conveyed the news that his coins had been traded. He had now secured a prestigious home in the realm of humans. UCM felt a true sense of admiration for the impressive efficiency with which the situation had been managed. Reflected on his desire to make a meaningful contribution to his clan. He hoped that his father would eventually permit him to take part in the ascension ceremony. He was confident that his strength was nearly on par with that of his siblings. As he waited, his annoyance resurfaced when he realized that had yet to return. Dongwu volunteered to go and get her. Dismissed him with a wave of her hand, firmly stating that she would take care of him in his new home among humans. He reassured her that there was no need to fret about any bumping, but calmly replied that they weren't operating an of. Let out a low grumble, but instructed to pass the message along to her regardless. In that moment, a wave of enchantment rippled through the atmosphere. Both men stood in shock, their expressions reflecting disbelief. Moved effortlessly, resembling water as he intertwined with the essence of all living creatures. The characteristics and applications of the item differed from person to person. At the opposite side of the moon quarters, experienced the same unsettling sensations and wished for well-being as her legs began to weaken beneath her. Was completely captivated by the spirit pills, experiencing a rush that made him feel as if he were on a high. Felt a jolt of surprise as he realized that the typical restrictions of the pill did not affect him. Burst into the room, anger radiating from him as he sensed the powerful energy coming from. He had come prepared for a confrontation. Swiftly accepted responsibility for the situation. He interrupted her, asserting that those beneath him should only speak when instructed. His annoyance intensified as energy kept on rising. He interpreted it as a clear sign of disrespect. Feeling annoying hunger trailed behind. He felt uncomfortable with the way he had spoken so abruptly to people he had only just met. UCM wished for to say his words again. With a smile this time he succeeded, which only intensified his fury. Harnessing his powers, he forcefully pushed out of the room. Asserted that his actions weren't bullying. Instead, he believed he was simply putting in his place. He continued his relentless assault. cautioned him that violence was not allowed in the Moon quarters and threatened to inform the authorities. However, remained indifferent to the warning. He launched an attack on. He advised her to respect her limits, revealing his disappointment that she had caught his attention. She had become nothing more than a disappointment. Fought against the technique, but soon he grasped its essence, the natural power of a divine beast named. UCM ordered to kneel down and plead for forgiveness. Nonchalantly took off his jacket. He himself for a confrontation, though no one understood the reason behind his need to remove the jacket. Felt a surge of excitement, certain that he would send to his grave. Effortlessly deflected his strikes. Everyone was left in a state of shock. Carefully assessed the circumstances and concluded that method utilized water, propelled at astonishing velocity. He recalled the familiar scent of tea from before and came to the realization. Had managed to send him sprawling out of the room. The following assaults were derived from the humidity present in the atmosphere and the wet grass. Remained calm and collected, in stark contrast to the opponent he had encountered before. UCM was just a minor player in the grand scheme of things. As charged toward, he skillfully executed a feint that tricked into taking the bait. He delivered a powerful blow to his abdomen. His mouth fell open in disbelief. Stepped out triumphant. Hungry shook off the sensation of being frozen, her mind still grappling with the shocking events she had just seen. His keen insight allowed him to. The attack was executed with flawless precision. The ambitious creature aspiring to be a divine beast seemed almost comical in his pride. She ultimately found herself bowing to. She was confident that had only arrived 3 days earlier. Despite his impressive strength, she found herself questioning what could have transpired in his life to bring about such a change in such a brief period. Found it hard to grasp that the fight had ended so quickly. He glanced over at and instructed him to offer an apology. In particular, the focus shifted to, who had merely attempted to intervene and halt the conflict. UCM's frustration ignited, yet sensed that something was amiss at that moment. An icicle pierced through his arm. UCM quickly notices the opportunity that lies ahead. Quickly responded, moving with remarkable speed as the other person rushed in. Was forcefully expelled from the room, yet his clan possessed a unique talent for harnessing and directing water, capable of increasing water pressure to lethal extremes. With a smirk, she noticed him observing her closely. Was losing blood rapidly. He disclosed that he had secretly introduced small amounts of water into his bloodstream, executing a gradual and covert assault. His body started to falter as revealed the truth. The monsters required more time to heal from poison or infections. Despite his wounds, acknowledged that possessed great strength, probably due to his goblin heritage. At that moment, concluded that it was time for to face the consequences of his actions. He collected a flow of water, preparing to unleash the decisive strike. His eyes ignited with a surge of rage, and, to his astonishment, the injury closed up in the blink of an eye. In a fit of panic, launched a sphere of water towards. Despite its seemingly small size, the attack packed a considerable punch, comparable in strength to Truckcon. Swiftly called upon his goblin club. He changed it in the same way he had during his battle with. Without the ability to depend on swordsmanship, poured a tremendous amount of monster energy into the weapon. The water ball was effortlessly cut apart. UCM protected himself from the consequences that followed. As the water calmed down, he came to the unsettling realization that was no longer there. Out of nowhere, emerged from behind him, executing a quick and fluid movement. The sharp blade sliced through his arms, leaving them severed. In response, let out a heart-wrenching cry of pain. His assertion that monsters possessed a high tolerance for pain took him by surprise. The sight of shaking uncontrollably brought a sense of amusement to him. Forcefully pushed him into an adjacent room, causing to fall to the ground, trembling. His clan held a prestigious position among the divine beasts, instilling fear in countless monsters. In that instant, understood that he was the drake in contrast to Wu's. Feeling shattered and ashamed, offered an apology to. Conveyed to him that the person who truly deserved it was someone else. The apology lingered, yearning for acknowledgement. He noticed the hesitation in him, but the expression on his face revealed that he had no other option. With an air of hesitation, stepped forward to, earnestly seeking forgiveness. In the meantime, at home, rested in bed, her mind filled with curiosity about the delay of breakfast. To her, her housemate was outside, delivering powerful blows to divine creatures before their midday meal. Later that day, Mar, the head of the household, found it hard to comprehend the chaos that had erupted in the moon quarters while he was away. Accepted the responsibility. Was well aware that was essentially a living warning sign. He inquired about T's well-being, and Dong-Wu assured him that she had not sustained any serious injuries. Recognized that she was obviously unsettled, yet he believed that none of it was truly her responsibility. Young inquired about Siwoo's whereabouts. Appeared as though he had just regained his senses after an extravagant celebration. He pondered the chaotic series of events he had experienced. He came to understand just how arrogant he had been, a behavior that felt completely uncharacteristic of him. He questioned whether the magical energy was playing tricks on his mind. His mind felt utterly fried. Reclined, attempting to make sense of the conflict. He had severed T's arm to stifle his magical abilities. He relished the experience, which his identity as a monster. He hoped it was merely a fleeting side effect when Hungary fabricated a reason to gain entry. Inquired about her health, wanting to know if she was feeling any better. She reassured him that it was just a small injury, but recognized the signs from his own experiences, and he knew it was anything but minor. Bowed low, seeking his forgiveness. Felt a sense of confusion wash over him. At that moment, she admitted that the black pill was not as effective. Although the silver and gold pills were superior, her jealousy led her to still suggest the black pill. Felt a wave of disbelief wash over him as he realized he had been deceived, much like those who fall for the tales of a con artist posing as an African prince. At that moment, disclosed that she also had a mixed heritage. Hybrids that combined the traits of humans and monsters were not uncommon. However, possessed a unique ability to perceive the essence of monsters. The character found themselves unable to take in the essential energy they needed. The pain of being born that way struck her to the core. She felt a twinge of envy towards for his remarkable ability to evade danger, often referred to as plot armor. To her, he seemed like a living miracle, a fusion that everyone acknowledged as a genuine monster. Driven by jealousy, she decided to play a small trick. He felt prepared to take his own life as an act of honor because of it. Was certain that decision was not the best choice. He approached her directly to express his apologies. He instructed to continue entertaining the other guests. Unexpectedly calm, graciously accepted the apology. He made a light-hearted remark about wanting to get his money back for the black pill. Mar nodded readily, showing no sign of doubt. Felt a wave of relief wash over him, knowing that had no lingering resentment. Comforted her, urging her not to worry about it. Suggested the idea of setting up a meeting to reconcile with. Was taken aback when she discovered that hailed from an elite clan. Emphasized that should definitely consider attending. The potential for misunderstandings loomed, and the consequences could spell trouble for him. It was far wiser to resolve the situation as soon as possible. Sensed a sense of responsibility for what had transpired. He silently wished that would show them some leniency. Struggled to comprehend the worry expressed by others, yet he sensed that if a confrontation was what they desired. He was eager to take on the challenge, cautioned him against underestimating their opponents. Unfazed by the reactions around him, confidently declared his ambition to become the king. Marion's expression reflected her shock as she processed the ease with which had mentioned that. He cautioned that making those kinds of accusations could easily lead him to his father. Was ready for that challenge. Had a fit over something trivial, leading him to ponder the mayhem that would have ensued had he revealed his aspirations sooner. Highlighted the frightening notion of monsters wandering freely in the human world, which sparked curiosity. Paused, having finished with his antics. Provided reassurance, expressing that his interest was sincere. Thought about how this was the first conversation he had experienced like this, since the former owner of the moon quarters had been there. Marion presented with a gift as a gesture of apology. He disclosed his desire to invest in him. As the day progressed, finally returned home, his appearance resembling that of a weary worker finishing up a long shift at the office. Regarded him with a wary gaze, inquiring about his recent whereabouts. Expressed his regret for arriving late. At that moment, disclosed that she possessed some valuable information. brightened at the sight of Salmi and offered a friendly greeting. The bird responded by delivering a swift kick, let out a frustrated sigh, chastising him for confusing the small, aggressive creature with Salmi. Advised to tread carefully, ensuring that he did not hurt Salmi's feelings. Salmi had been bustling about, collecting bits of information as she informed others. She had focused her attention on specific locations, where several cases of missing persons had been reported. They would soon set off for those places. Had an additional thought to express as she spoke. Received a sharp slap across the face as a consequence for his actions. He forced her to wear his damp clothes and instructed him to take her out shopping. After some time had passed, they reached the department store, gazed in wonder at the towering structure, marveling at the fact that humans had built it without the aid of any magic. It was first experience purchasing clothing. Given his past appearance as a pig, it was no surprise. Nothing he donned ever held any real significance. Found himself in the moment he had always envisioned, and he intended to savor every second of it. His eyes gleamed with enthusiasm, but, aware of the impending turmoil, felt an urgent desire to break free from his presence. Upon stepping into the department store, swiftly understood just how pricey the clothing items were. His spirit seemed to almost escape his body. He was certain that extra zeros had been mistakenly included on every price tag. At that moment, Sayal confidently walked out, showcasing his presence. She appeared as if she had stepped straight out of an Instagram influencer's profile, radiating confidence and style. Was approached for his thoughts on the matter. Found himself unable to contain his tears, and it wasn't due to her beauty. His financial situation was so dire that it felt as though his bank account was barely hanging on. Made an effort to remain optimistic, viewing this as his chance to repay her for all the support she had given him in handling the monsters. Had already dashed away to explore more clothing options before he had a chance to regain his composure. They hadn't even realized that the idea of more existed when it came to shopping. He felt as though he was about to lose his strength and fall apart. She unexpectedly placed a handful of coins into his palm, encouraged him to feel free to request more without any hesitation. It was her method of expressing gratitude. In that instant, had clearly taken on the role of his sugar mommy. After some time, and after spending more money on clothes, found himself helplessly infatuated with her. Felt a genuine shock as he realized how beautiful he found her. He swiftly regained his composure and reminded him of what was important. As they left the place, was taken aback by the extent of fashion sense. It was particularly noteworthy, since it marked her initial experience in the human realm. She acknowledged that it was due to his habit of frequently returning with fashion magazines. As she prepared to reveal her true intentions for visiting the human realm, her gaze shifted, filled with a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. In that moment, a figure collided with, disrupting the tranquility of the realm. He swiftly expressed his regret, found themselves puzzled by the way humans responded, anticipated that he would send the guy flying into another dimension with a powerful clap, dismissed the concern with a casual shrug, indicating that it wasn't as serious as it seemed, emphasized that within the spirit realm, the film portrayed a performance that, if taken lightly, could easily cause others to see him as feeble. From her viewpoint, she believed that confrontation concluded with him yielding, despite his potential to emerge victorious. Couldn't believe that she was aware of the fight. Nonchalantly mentioned that he smelled strongly of wet dog, a telltale indication of a recent monster fight. She also speculated that the youngest sibling was likely responsible for the mess. Inquired about the closeness of their relationship. Shared that she was friends with his sister. A couple of years prior, whispers began to spread about. Upon discovering that sister was the source of these rumors, she decided to confront her. Inquired about whether they had engaged in a fight, addressing directly. She confessed that she had forced her to eat dirt. She had lost sight of them since that time, but she had caught wind of ominous threats. She cautioned that adapting to life as a monster would be a challenging journey, and he suggested that he should use violence with determination. Expressed his gratitude to her for the valuable life lessons she had shared. Confidently instructed him to prepare for the conclusion of whatever challenges lay ahead. The couple who had collided with hurried away, clearly on their way to some destination. Without any warning, the young man vanished into thin air and In a flurry of anxiety, his companion searched frantically, her mind racing with questions about his sudden disappearance. At that instant, the creature referred to as lurked close by. As she sipped her coffee, she quietly remarked to herself that men only seemed appealing when they put up a fight. At that moment, a young man, evidently a newcomer to the terrifying spectacle, gazed at with wide, astonished eyes, as if he had fallen in love at first sight. Just as nonchalantly expelled the glass from the guy's hand. The glasses left a lasting impact on him, haunting him for the rest of his life. His brother showed up, eager to engage in a brief conversation. She pondered the reasons behind his choice, to violate the unwritten rule of not encroaching on each other's territory. Her brother conveyed that they were being tracked by certain monsters. Found no reason to halt his progress at that moment. Despite the circumstances, he persisted in wanting to manage the situation discreetly and sought her assistance. 2 monsters were already hiding in the shadows nearby. As pondered the situation, it dawned on him that hadn't brought him to the department store merely for the purpose of shopping for clothes. She disclosed her suspicion that monsters were making their home nearby. Wore a confident smirk on her face. The group had successfully identified their targets, marking the beginning of the hunt. The characters contemplated the possibility of becoming the king. The question lingered in the air. Would the human realm be consumed by chaos? She invited readers to express their interest in the next part by leaving a comment. The narrator encouraged viewers to tap the like button and reminded them not to overlook the importance of subscribing for more emotional and action-packed recaps. Grateful for the viewers' attention, the narrator expressed appreciation as they concluded the episode.